Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by Mike Gallagher, and we're here to talk through a 7-game slate, one of the smaller slates of the week. All the slates this week are between 6 and 9 games. So Tuesday and Thursday, the slightly smaller ones. But plenty of teams on back-to-backs, plenty of question marks on the injury front. Further removed from health and safety protocols. Haven't had to worry about that for a while. But we've got big question marks. So let's start, Mike, with the guy that I like to talk about the most, the reigning MVP of the league, who I think should be the current MVP of the league. On the front end of a back-to-back here, Nikola Jokic, the dude does not like to miss games, but he's listed as questionable with a toe injury. You could argue that tomorrow's game is a little bit more important against Utah than against Minnesota. I don't think Denver thinks through these things this way. I think they just think about the health of the player and how healthy they are to go and whatnot. But what are your expectations for if Jokic and DeMarcus Cousins, his backup, are potentially available tonight? They're both questionable.
I think there's a pretty good chance Jokic plays. We haven't seen him listed with a toe. He was listed with a toe back in May of 2021. So we'll see. He was probable with that tag, so it's maybe something that he's been playing through. You know, some people. I have, like, when I used to play all the time, my toes used to be jacked up all the time. But it's something you generally could play through. It is back to back, so I feel pretty confident he's going to play. But never know. But yeah, a little bit more worried about Boogie playing. But I think Joker should be a go. We saw JaMychal Green kind of get back in the mix. So if one or both don't play, and Malone liked how he played a lot. So we'll see, pretty good amount of J-Mike if one or both don't play. And then also rotation change too, which isn't injury related, but Bones Highland leapfrogged Facu Campazzo, and that's going to stick according to Malone. It sounds like he's ready to give Bones another chance here.
Yeah, it's been the same thing with Michael Malone and Bones Highland that it's usually is with Michael Malone and rookies, which is just that you really got to earn it with Michael Malone to get your playing time, and the smallest kind of inconsistent level of inconsistency will earn you very inconsistent playing time with him. We saw it with Jokic way back when. We've seen it with Michael Porter Jr. Now we're seeing it with Bones Highland. So I think all of this is Michael Malone's way of teaching, right? Is like, you got to show up and be consistent if you want a consistent spot in this rotation. Okay, on to New Orleans, where Brandon Ingram is questionable once again. Josh Hart is ruled out. Jonas Valanciunas is not on the injury report, so Joe Val should be good to go. They started Jackson Hayes last night against the Cavs. They play Detroit tonight, a team that is getting back Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk. Probably not big enough to play Jackson Hayes again, but Hayes was really, really good last night, and they certainly want to carve out more time for him. It would be harder to do so if Brandon Ingram is available. What are your thoughts on Brandon Ingram tonight?
Yeah, I thought Brandon Ingram hasn't had a chance to play. There's really been no positive reports. We got that shoot-around thing, but, I mean, shoot-around's no big deal to go through if you have ankle soreness. So I still think he sits without really any indication that he's practiced. Don't forget, back in like early November, he was practicing when he had that quad contusion. They were still holding him out. So I think he's going to sit. The interesting part is Josh Hart not playing here. So Willie Green said that they were, quote, definitely going to explore using Jackson Hayes in different matchups. They did use it against Philly earlier last month, and I think they're going to use it again, even though, against that second unit with like Trey Lyles and Olynyk most likely being the 4-5s. I think it's a spot you can look there, and they want to try it out. And I mean, some of the guys they're playing, like, who cares? Like Gary Clark, Garrett Temple,
Right.
like they're not really significant minutes. It was awesome. Like Jackson Hayes was arguably their best player yesterday. So I think he's in the 5 minutes there, kind of regardless. It may not be like heavier minutes where he's like, you see 31 as like the almost straight 4-man. But yeah, without Hart, we might and we should see Nickeil Alexander-Walker start. I wouldn't be totally shocked if they just start big there again, and put Garrett Temple, because they're going to need a point of attack defender on top of Herb. But yeah, I would say they probably start Nickeil and Herb, and then.
You think it would basically be down to Nickeil or Jackson Hayes, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they start Nickeil, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do start bigger with Jackson out of the gate.
Yeah. All right. Phoenix is another situation to monitor. They got an upgrade on DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder, who both got upgraded to questionable. This is kind of a big deal because Phoenix is really, really thin. There's no Landry Shamet. If they were without Crowder and without Ayton, they do have McGee back, but they really start to get thin with no Campaign, no Landry Shamet. They're not super comfortable getting deep into the guards. Elf Payton we've seen get teens minutes in these spots. So that means they'd have to shift more minutes down positionally. Mikal Bridges having to cover some minutes at the 2, maybe Cam Johnson have to cover some minutes at the 3. So if they have Ayton and Crowder, they have enough bodies to spread these around, and everything gets really comfortable. If they're without those guys, though, then you really get squeezed at the 4 minutes, and you probably have to play a lot of Ish Wainwright at the 4. The 5 could still be manned by Bismack Biyombo, JaVale McGee, and even Jalen Smith if they wanted to play him a little bit. I think Jalen Smith might have to play a little bit of 4 just to give a little breather if they were without Ayton and Crowder.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a big deal on how this all shakes out. What are your leans on DeAndre Ayton and Jay Crowder's availability for tonight?
So I think they're both out, but not confident. We've seen, as of I think Saturday, DeAndre Ayton did no on-court work. We saw him do like light shooting without really moving 2 games ago. And then we just saw just now he was wrapping up shoot around in full gear, moving around, which is really the first time we've seen him go full gear, which is usually an indication that you're getting close, but probably not playing. But this ankle injury wasn't that bad to begin with, so maybe they're comfortable getting him out there. But I still kind of think he's sits. Jay Crowder said he's still dealing with pain in his wrist. He's going to have to deal with it for a while. I think they might be careful with him. But, I mean, this dude plays through a lot of stuff, so maybe he does go. But, yeah, so we're going to lean in on those guys until we get more information. And just also worth noting, they went the full fourth quarter with Ish Wainwright at the center spot. They were running Shaman out there, and then they kind of pulled him and he got hurt, and they put Booker in to close the rest of it. But, yeah, no center minutes in the fourth in this close game against the Spurs because they just want to run the switch everything group that they've been playing great with. And they said that they're really confident with their switch everything style, which is important to note for the playoffs. But, yeah, as you mentioned, like if they're missing both those guys, minutes are going to be real high, especially if they run Ish at the center spot like they did on Sunday. But, I mean, yeah, you see these minutes, 40 for Mikal, and worth noting, Monty was asked about it. And don't forget, when these guys first started getting hurt, we talked about, like, oh, I want to bring Chris Paul down to the mid-30s or whatever. And he's just like, nope, I got no choice, basically, but to play these guys big minutes. So,
well,
yeah.
that's where I was going to ask you, specifically if they had Crowder and DeAndre Ayton, they would still be shorthanded in the backcourt, right? No Shamet, no Campaign.
Yeah.
But they could shift guys down and at least take some of the burden off and get CP3, down to like 36 instead of 40 and stuff like that. Do you think if they have Ayton and Crowder, what happens is let's say, like, theoretically, I'm looking at our projections now. I think we have like 68 minutes between Chris Paul and Cam Johnson as like an example. How would you break those up? Do you have Chris Paul at the 38 and Cam Johnson back down to 30, or do you think Cam Johnson keeps into the mid-30s to take a little bit off of Chris Paul during the stretch that they've really extended him?
Yeah, I honestly don't think Chris Paul's affected that much. It's just a matter if they want to play Alfred Payton, which they kind of don't. Yeah, I think probably like 36 is probably a good projection on Chris Paul, almost regardless, just because of the way he's been playing, and he's comfortable with it based on his comments and Monty. So, yeah, I think he'll be all right. And yeah, Mikal would lose a little bit of that high-end stuff. Yeah, Cam, you mentioned, would lose a little bit of that with Crowder in there too, and then Ish would lose decent minutes. We saw them run, that Jay Crowder five-man center lineup a lot, and they basically just put Ish in that role.
Yeah. All right, some players that are returning tonight, which is always nice. On Detroit side of things, we talked about Jeremy Grant, but Kelly Olynyk too. This gives them some added depth. Detroit's actually favored in this game. They've been playing better of late. I think it's 7-7 over the last 14 games, something like that. So been getting some wins. Favored at home tonight against the Pelicans, who are on the second night of back-to-back. Getting Jeremy Grant and Kelly Olynyk back. How do you think this impacts the Pistons rotation, and who gets hurt the most by having Olynyk and Jeremy Grant both back?
So it's going to be Rodney McGruder getting squeezed the most, and Josh Jackson is doubtful, so he's out probably anyways. So don't forget, the last time Olynyk came back before he got put in protocols, Dwayne Casey said they'd want to play Troy Lyles at the 4. So pretty straightforward. He loves Frank Jackson. Frank Jackson, I would be shocked if he's out of the rotation. They like Killian Hayes off the bench, and I think they're comfortable with that, especially with Frank. Hamidou Diallo would move to the bench as kind of the backup 2-3 opposite Frank. They would use them kind of interchangeably there. So yeah, that would be kind of a 10-man rotation with obviously Grant moving in Diallo's spot, and then everything else would be mostly unchanged with the rest of the group.
And then it probably takes out the high-end outcomes on guys like Sadiq Bey, right? In terms of like the 38s and stuff like that. I'm looking at like our minutes projections now, and basically the way we have this figured out is we've got like kind of 12 leftover, 3 minutes for that are split right now between Hamidou Diallo and Rodney Magruder, like with not a clear indication. I think that role might be closer to 16, but just kind of looking around where those minutes would come from, there's not a lot of clear places where it would come from unless they kept Trey Lyles down to like 14, something like that. We have Trey Lyles at 18 right now, Kelly Olynyk at 22, Isaiah Stewart 25 for the bulk of the center minutes between those two guys. I don't think it matters much for DFS purposes, but just in terms of like understanding how the rotation works, and there's just too many guys for not enough seats right now. So what ends up happening a lot of times is the high end outcomes get squeezed on guys because the coaching staff will try to like fit everybody in the first half, and then there's not enough minutes to make up for the second half when they like kind of tighten things up. So Sadiq Bey, these 36s and 38s, they're probably coming off the board while Jeremy Grant is back in the mix until other injuries hit that they have to tighten things up again.
Or trades.
Yeah, or trades, exactly.
Yep.
Okay, other injury return situations. We should talk about Minnesota. Pat Beverly sounds like he's probable tonight. D'Angelo Russell got downgraded to doubtful. We saw them play without both of these guys last game. Jordan McLaughlin played pretty well in his 27 minutes, really effective. Jalen Noel got a lot of minutes as well in that spot. Malik Beasley did not benefit a ton, even though both guys were out. So I think Beasley's place in the rotation is kind of stuck. With Beverly coming back, I think Beverly's return impacts McLaughlin the most. I still have McLaughlin in the rotation, but for much fewer minutes, for just kind of like 12, 13 minutes, something in kind of a backup role. And then we've seen them be more comfortable with Taurean Prince and Jalen McDaniels of late. So it seems like Minnesota's fairly straightforward, even though they're getting a player back and D'Angelo Russell's still out of the mix. What are your thoughts on how, if we see a minutes limit on Bev, like how that impacts the point guard rotation as a whole?
Yeah, when he comes back from injuries, they've ramped him up. I didn't look at minutes yet, but I would probably put him at like 23 based on, I don't remember what the exact numbers were, but I believe it was like 23, 22 and 24 in the 2 times he returned from a multiple game absence. So I would expect a pretty good cap there. As you mentioned, Jordan McLaughlin would almost certainly be moving to the bench. Chris Finch said that he did like McLaughlin next to D'Angelo Russell for whatever that is worth. So I think, and they also mentioned that he started McLaughlin and Beasley for the matchup against Mike Conley. So before that, they were starting McDaniels and Noel, and then McDaniels just gets in foul trouble all the time. He played awesome against Utah, and I think Finch basically said, "We're basically done starting McDaniels. We can't do it because he gets these early foul trouble, and it just throws his whole rotation off." So I think he's just going to keep him there regardless, which is great news for Malik Beasley there. So I think Beasley, maybe could get it going here. Not the best matchup, revenge game though, for him too. So expect those guys. I expect Beasley's minutes to be pretty safe, but yeah, McLaughlin and Noel. McLaughlin will be losing a ton because we know that Noel has been ahead of him for weeks now with the way things have been shaking out. Don't think it really affects Cat or Ant or even Vanderbilt with Beverly coming back. And Okogie's questionable, but that's fine. They just have Taurean Prince. They don't really need the wing perimeter defense here, obviously, with Jokic getting all the attention, assuming he goes. So I don't really think Okogie playing would have too much takeaway from DFS or fantasy.
The one thing that I'll note is just that I think while Jalen Noel has been great all year long, I do think last game was a little bit of an indication that there's probably not going to be a huge minute ceiling to him on any given night, right? Like the fact that with no Beverly and no D'Angelo Russell, that he kind of got capped out at that mid-20s area because they're comfortable playing McLaughlin, just seems like, there's not going to be 30s in the mix for Noel. I think his role's very, very safe. I think, each and every night he's going to be between 20 to 25. But I don't think there's going to be kind of that high end. It looks like he's in kind of that old school, like Lou Williams kind of bench role where, you're going to get a lot of ball dominant usage. You might close on occasion. The minutes might get into the upper mid 20s, but probably not into the 30s because of some of the defensive concerns with Noel.
Yep.
Okay. The Spurs, the whole team's back, the whole gang. The Spurs rested Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Jakob Poeltl all last game against the Suns, and they still went out there and played their tails off. The guys played really, really well. Lonnie Walker was a huge spark off the bench. Josh Primo played well as they continue to kind of bring his development along slowly. But they'll get back everybody tonight for the matchup with Golden State. Any changes in expectation from rotation for you based on how well guys played in the absence of the starters last time out?
I think Trey Jones has a pretty good chance to stick. We saw him kind of go away as they staggered Derek White and DeJounte, so that's probably one person who may get more run. I don't really think Primo moved the needle much. Pop really doesn't like his defense, which is why he's kind of struggled to get some playing time. And maybe Lonnie's got a little bit of a longer leash. You're probably going to need to score here against the Warriors. Don't need the size too much on the wings either, especially with potentially guys sitting out here. So I think they could go a little bit smaller, maybe to put Doug McDermott at risk. But obviously we'll see Wancho and those guys kind of go away. I don't really think that anything happened with them.
Yeah, and just to note, we have not gotten a filing from Golden State on the injury report. I imagine that will be happening shortly at the 2:30 number, because that will be 1:30 local time for San Antonio.
Yeah, we could probably speculate on. We know Clay's going to sit. I think Iguodala is going to sit. Otto Porter will be back, which worth noting too that Kerr wants to play Moses Moody. We saw Moody surprisingly start yesterday and play pretty well, and against a team that's pretty similar as far as personnel goes with this Texas double dip. So I think Moody might start again in Clay's spot, and then you're bringing Otto back basically in Mooney's spot to build your team that way.
Bielitsa would be the other question mark. He was unavailable last night. We're projecting him in currently in the rotation. We're projecting Iguodala and Clay out. That would be another spot to keep an eye on. Even with Bielitsa out last night and Looney limited to 26 minutes, Kuminga only at 11 minutes. So I think the Kuminga ride is going to be up and down. I just think that's the nature of rookies and Kerr and wanting to get looks at them. So there'll be some moments that we get excited about Kuminga, and then there'll be moments where you kind of crash back down to earth, as it is with young players.
JTA was basically the backup center spot, which is kind of uncharacteristic for him. You would have thought it would have been Kuminga, but it was mostly JTA for those non-Looney minutes.
Along with Golden State not filing, Miami has not filed yet as well. Obviously, Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry have been out for them, so we'll see if we get any more clarity on Jimmy Butler. They're playing the Raptors again tonight, so waiting on information there. And then new outs that we just wanted to tackle. Bradley Beal is going to be out for the next few games for Washington. We know what we're getting with Washington. We've seen them play without Bradley Beal a bunch. Spencer Dinwiddie and Kyle Kuzma get big boosts and opportunities. We've seen Corey Kispert play more minutes in those spots because they've been able to have more guard spots in minutes available. And then we've seen them basically have room for Avdija and Hachimura. And if they wanted Bertans, they haven't really gone in that direction. But the big thing about last game was Daniel Gafford got that DNP-CD. And this is the question going forward for Washington is, are we down to a straight two-man center rotation? And I just don't know that we'll feel comfortable with it. I mean, even in this straight two-man center rotation, they only played 38 combined minutes at this, or 39 combined minutes at the center spot between Bryant and Harrell. It was really to free up getting more of the wing minutes out there with Hachimura and Avdija and those guys. So I don't know. We've been waiting because some of these guys, Bryant and Harrell, are really good permanent producers. If we could get them into the mid-20s, we'd feel pretty good about them in DFS. But I don't know if we're ever going to feel good about getting there until some of these 3s and 4s, get hurt or traded or something to siphon out this roster, because they're just trying to find ways to play Avdija and Kispert and these guys they've been and Hachimura, the guys that they've invested draft picks in of late, and they just don't have a lot of ways to do it without sneaking some center minutes from Kuzma or Hachimura, whoever you think is the guy there.
And we did get Miami. We'll talk about that in a second, but I feel pretty confident Bryant starts again. I'd honestly be shocked if he didn't, based on the comments from Wes Unseld saying that they want to get a crack at him, and he's really such an excellent player for them. Also, matchups really noteworthy here against Giannis. Wes Unseld talked about showing the bodies to Giannis, talked about Kuzma picking up most of that responsibility, and then Denny Abdia also picking up a lot of responsibility defensively there. So the question is that Kyle Kuzma or Abdia, or is it and? Which means they would start them both. And I think Danny's got a shot to start. We know Kispert's been usually getting that starting job. I think they want to get more size in this matchup. So I think Denny's going to be the guy. They are on a back-to-back too, so if you want to stream them and season-long people listening out there. But yeah, I expect those guys to benefit the most. I don't really think we're going to see too many other guys. Maybe I don't think we see Gafford again. Maybe they go back to a 3 minute split. They're going to want a lot of size out there. So those small ball center lineups that we saw against the Grizzlies maybe a little bit less likely here. But yeah, I feel pretty good about Bryant. I probably won't get like that mid-20s on consistent basis, but he still has a minutes cap on him. We saw him get longer leash, like when it was a garbage time game, they let him go. I think it was against Boston. So like maybe he gets there. But it's only a matter of time before it's Bryant party time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be out for a while for Brooklyn. They get James Harden likely back tonight. He's listed as probable. So we saw them over the weekend after playing Golden State without Harden and KD. Kyrie kind of kept him in it. They're on the road again here in Phoenix. Kyrie and Harden, you would expect really, really heavy minutes. The secondary guys are once again going to be difficult to project just because Brooklyn's going to play stuff based on matchups and whatnot. But with Kyrie and Harden there, I don't think you are super interested in the secondary guys anyway. Any other notes on the Brooklyn side of things? It seems like they've been more and more confident with James Johnson of late. He seems to be the guy that has really been picking up playing time in the absence of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how Nick Claxton and if Dameron Sharp gets back in the mix. But Claxton maybe could get it going here. We know his bids have been really capped, but one, because he's been injured, and two, because they have bodies there. Worth noting, James Johnson not an injury report after he did tweak his ankle. Very little concern there. So it should be okay, but just something to keep an eye on there. And yeah, Kessler Edwards minutes are really, really secure, kind of regardless. They're putting a lot on his plate defensively. But of course, if Harden goes, there's just not enough usage for him to really show any sort of upside.
Do you think with Aldridge out, we get Daron Sharp back in the rotation, or do you think this is still going to be Blake Griffin, James Johnson, those types of guys filling Aldridge's role?
I think Sharp probably gets in there, but not confident in it.
Yeah.
They don't feel the same way about him as they do compared to Kessler Edwards and those guys.
Yeah. All right, let's focus on Miami since we just got the Miami stuff. Jimmy Butler being in will require a change to projections for us, for sure, because I think we had Jimmy assumed out based on how many games he's missed of late. But certainly, like, Miami just doesn't need to play as concentrated as they've played of late. They got wrecked last night, and Strus still got up to 41 minutes. Second night of a back-to-back here. Game against Toronto. Toronto's going to play their studs. A lot of minutes, as usual, is the guess. What are your expectations for how Jimmy Butler influences things? I would assume Caleb Martin goes back to the bench.
I would think Strus would be more likely to go to the bench.
Okay.
Right? No, you don't think so? I think Duncan Robinson and Strus.
What they're doing with Hero, if they're confident with Hero in the bench role, or if they're going to move him back into the starting line. I mean, yesterday was a disaster. They could not score points in the first quarter. Yep. So I would not be surprised to see Tyler Hero back in the starting lineup. The other thing with Jimmy, though, is if you chose to keep Strus in the starting lineup over Caleb, it's just a lot of shooting around Jimmy.
Yeah.
Which is
Tucker.
something
Tucker is questionable too, so maybe he's back. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I'll add. I mean, Spoelstra wants to win this game. Someone was asked about, you've been playing so many minutes and so on. Guys are banged up, and he said, "quote We have a job to do on getting this win." So I would expect Jimmy to be full go. I think they sat him out knowing they want to get this win. So yeah, Jimmy would be a guy that we'll probably be talking about on the show later. And then if Tucker can go, that obviously would boot both those guys to the bench.
Yeah. All right. That'll do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. We'll be back tomorrow at 2:00, same place, same time. Make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel. Make sure you are clicking or smashing the like button to help us circulate this content and allow us to continue to deliver this free content for you, get you ready each and every day, Monday through Friday, for the NBA slate ahead. If you're a premium subscriber at Established Run, we are excited to have you, and we will see you behind the paywall at 5:00 Eastern today with myself and Mike Gallagher breaking down the slate from a DFS perspective. We have lowered the prices for the second half of the season here on the DFS side of things and on the bundle side of things with the props package. The props package prices are staying the same the rest of the way, so don't expect any further discounts there. If you want to get in, now is the good time to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching and joining us on this voyage. We will see you tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern. Best of luck in the games tonight. Enjoy the NBA hoops. Later, guys.